The Shining is one of the most chilling tales ever written, a story of isolation, madness, and a haunted hotel. But what if there's more to it than meets the eye? Stephen King's novel has terrified readers and viewers for decades, yet some believe its horrors go far beyond the supernatural. Could the Overlook Hotel itself represent something much darker? America's history of violence and genocide? There's a theory that The Shining isn't just a ghost story, it's a reflection of the atrocities committed against Native Americans. From the very beginning, the story hints at this connection. The Overlook Hotel, perched high in the Colorado Rockies, is built on land that once belonged to native tribes. A passing mention in both the book and the film notes that the hotel's construction involved fighting off Native American attacks. But is this just background detail, or a clue to a deeper metaphor? When you look closely, The Shining becomes more than a psychological thriller. It transforms into an allegory for cultural erasure, systemic violence, and the haunting of a nation by its own unresolved sins. Over the next few minutes, we'll dive into the evidence that suggests King's horror masterpiece is a reflection of America's darkest truths. From symbolic design choices to the hidden role of the Overlook itself, let's explore why The Shining might be much more than a haunted hotel. In both the novel and the film, the Overlook Hotel is more than just a backdrop. It's a central character, steeped in sinister history. Stephen King's story describes the hotel as being built on sacred Native American land, a detail that's easy to overlook but loaded with meaning. The land wasn't just taken, it was violently seized, and the hotel's construction involved what's described as fighting off Indian attacks. That line, brief as it is, connects the Overlook to a real history of colonization and genocide. For centuries, indigenous peoples across America were displaced, their land stolen and their cultures destroyed. The Overlook stands as a monument to this violent legacy, built on the ruins of a people erased from history. Then there's the name Overlook. Could it be a nod to how society tends to overlook or ignore its own dark past? The hotel thrives on death and destruction, much like the forces that allowed it to exist in the first place. The ghosts that haunt the Overlook might represent more than the victims of isolated tragedies. They could symbolize the collective guilt of a nation built on the suffering of others. As we delve deeper into the story's layers, it becomes clear that the Overlook's origins aren't just fictional, they're disturbingly tied to real historical atrocities. When you start paying attention to the details of the Overlook Hotel, its visual elements take on an unsettling significance. The hotel's design is infused with Native American motifs, from the Navajo-style carpets to the geometric patterns on the walls. At first glance, these details might seem like artistic choices or regional decor, but they carry a deeper, more disturbing weight. The film in particular highlights these elements, almost forcing the viewer to notice them. Why? Could it be Kubrick's way of reminding us that the Overlook is built on sacred land, a land stolen, exploited, and ultimately erased of its cultural identity? These symbols are not just decorative, they echo the themes of cultural appropriation and erasure that underpin the hotel's history. And then there's the infamous elevator scene. The river of blood that pours out could symbolize more than just horror. It might represent the lives lost and the violence endured during America's westward expansion. The Overlook doesn't just thrive on individual tragedies, it's a manifestation of systemic violence built on a foundation of bloodshed. Every detail in the Overlook Hotel feels deliberate, from the patterns underfoot to the oppressive vastness of its halls. These visual cues reinforce the idea that the hotel isn't just haunted by ghosts, it's haunted by history. When you walk through its corridors, you're walking through the remnants of a past that refuses to stay buried. Jack Torrance is the heart of The Shining's descent into madness, but his role goes beyond one man's psychological unraveling. Jack becomes a vessel for the Overlook Hotel, a pawn in its mission to perpetuate cycles of violence and oppression. His story is not just personal, it's deeply connected to the history that the Overlook represents. When Jack interacts with the hotel's ghosts, they aren't simply random spirits. Many of them, like Delbert Grady, are relics of a bygone era. Their language, behavior and motivations reflect a time when oppression and exploitation were the norm. They urge Jack to embrace the hotel's legacy of control and violence, pushing him to repeat the atrocities of the past. Jack's descent mirrors how history has a way of repeating itself. He starts as an ordinary man with flaws, but no true malice. Yet, under the hotel's influence, he becomes a violent force, consumed by rage and power. It's as if the Overlook uses him to show how easy it is for individuals to become complicit in larger systems of harm. Even as Jack loses himself, the hotel thrives. It doesn't care about him as a person, it only cares about continuing its dark legacy. Jack is a reminder that individuals can be pulled into perpetuating systemic violence, often without fully understanding the role they're playing. In the end, he becomes another ghost in the Overlook's long and bloody history. Wendy and Danny Torrance represent something different in the narrative of The Shining: resistance. While Jack succumbs to the Overlook's power, Wendy and Danny fight to escape it. Their struggle is not just for survival, it's symbolic of breaking free from the cycles of violence and oppression that the hotel embodies. Wendy is often dismissed as a passive character, but her strength lies in her resilience. She doesn't fully understand the hotel's evil, but she knows she must protect her son and herself. Her determination to leave, no matter the odds, stands in direct opposition to Jack's descent into the Overlook's clutches. Wendy's survival isn't just physical, it's a refusal to allow the Overlook's darkness to consume her family. Danny, on the other hand, is deeply connected to the hotel's malevolent history through his shining ability. He sees the Overlook's true nature in ways that others cannot. But instead of being trapped by its influence, Danny uses his gift to outsmart it. His psychic connection to the hotel becomes his greatest weapon, allowing him to escape its grasp. Despite their escape, the Overlook remains standing, untouched and ready for its next victim. This ending raises a haunting question. Can you truly escape the past? Or does it linger, waiting to resurface? Wendy and Danny may have survived, but their fight represents a larger battle against the forces of history that seek to repeat themselves. When you look at The Shining through the lens of history, the parallels between the Overlook Hotel and America's violent past become unsettlingly clear. The hotel's construction on sacred Native American land is not just a plot point, it mirrors the real-life stories of colonization and cultural erasure that shaped the country. The Overlook thrives on death and destruction, much like the historical westward expansion that displaced indigenous peoples. The hotel's existence depends on the violent past it's built upon, and its malevolence is a reminder of the unresolved sins of history. In this way, the Overlook becomes more than a haunted building. It's a metaphor for the foundations of a nation built on stolen land and bloodshed. Even the ghosts in the Overlook can be seen as representations of this past. They're relics of a time when exploitation and violence were normalized, and their presence serves as a reminder that the legacy of these actions still lingers. The hotel isn't just haunted by the individuals who died there, it's haunted by the broader historical atrocities that enabled its existence. By connecting these historical threads, The Shining forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth. The past isn't just something that happened, it's something that continues to shape the present. The Overlook may be fictional, but the systems of violence it represents are very real, and their shadows still loom large today. Stephen King's stories are never just about the scares. They often dig deep into the darker corners of society and human nature. The Shining is no different. While King has never outright confirmed that his novel reflects the genocide of Native Americans, the themes of violence, guilt, and historical reckoning are central to the story. King frequently explores generational trauma in his work, showing how the past has a way of creeping into the present. In The Shining, the Overlook Hotel feels like a living embodiment of this idea, a place where the sins of the past are not only remembered, but actively repeated. Jack Torrance's descent into madness isn't just personal. It mirrors a broader pattern of systemic harm that continues unchecked. Even the name Overlook could be a subtle nod to societal tendencies to ignore or downplay historical atrocities. By focusing the story in a hotel steeped in violent history, King invites readers to think beyond the surface horror and consider what the Overlook represents. Is it merely haunted by ghosts or by the unresolved guilt of a nation? King's talent lies in creating narratives that are terrifying on multiple levels. Whether or not he intended for The Shining to be a commentary on America's past, the connections are undeniable. It's this complexity that keeps the story alive in our minds and open to new interpretations. The Shining isn't just a ghost story. It's a mirror held up to the darkest parts of our history. The Overlook Hotel serves as a haunting metaphor, not just for the personal struggles of its characters, but for the collective guilt of a nation. Its ties to the genocide of Native Americans force us to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, erasure, and the cycles of harm that persist through time. But the beauty of a story like The Shining is its ability to hold multiple meanings. Is it about a man losing his mind, a family fighting for survival, or is it a critique of systemic oppression hidden beneath the guise of horror? That's for each of us to decide. What do you think? Is The Shining simply a terrifying tale, or is it King's way of making us face the ghosts of history? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed diving into the hidden layers of stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Join us next time as we uncover more secrets, conspiracies, and deeper meanings lurking in the works we love. Because sometimes, the most chilling truths aren't the ones staring us in the face. They're the ones hiding in the shadows.